Thanks, Matt. I will now invite Kirsty Worth up to share her story.
Hello everyone. 5 years ago when I was in the birthing suite in the hospital, holding my son, looking at him, I thought, my life is going to change. This is going to be wonderful. I didn't expect my life would change like it did. Everything went pretty well for the first year, and then my son became very, very sick, very unwell. He stopped making eye contact, he stopped doing all the normal things that you would expect a child to do. And then the extreme behaviour came. He would attack us, he would hit us, he stopped talking to me, calling me mum. And then eventually he just ended up lying on the floor, rolling a car back and forth, and that was it. And we were told through a diagnosis, your son has autism. He's never going to attend a normal school, he's never going to talk to you, he won't recognise you. You need to set yourself up for a life of looking after your son. So as a mum, I suppose you take two options. It's you take, okay, well this is what's going to be, or you do what we did, and whether it's complete denial or not, but we embarked on research after research after research, and we eventually, after testing, found out that my son's brain was starving. He had all these things growing in his gut. They were releasing so many toxins that they were actually affecting his brain so much that he just couldn't work. My son's gut was just falling apart. So we embarked on this huge journey. We changed his diet, we changed everything. We changed our filters in our house. Everything's chlorine free. We got a filter from Switzerland that cost us $4,000 to get rid of everything in the air. We did everything you could imagine. And the big thing that we did was that we started getting Moo View milk.
I was milking the cows Tuesday morning, halfway through milking, and I just had 5 people walk through the door. They'd come through the other parts of the shed into where I was milking, and they were demanding that I speak to them straight away. And I said, well, I've got an appointment to be at in half an hour, and I've still got to finish milking. And they said, oh, well, how long will it take for you to finish milking? And I said, 20 minutes. And they said, well, we'll wait for you to do that, but we're going to need to talk to you afterwards. So I just kept milking. They went off back through the dairy. I don't know what they did in there. The one dairy authority officer stayed in the dairy having a look, and I ducked out to feed some baby calves that I'd had the milk ready to feed, and when I did that I noticed there was a plain police car with a police officer standing alongside it, parked diagonally across our driveway.
Stop you from escaping?
To stop me from escaping, or whether they thought I was going to bring the Hells Angels to come and beat them up, or what they were worried about, I don't know. But
Well, have people been complaining about the fact that you've been providing unpasteurised milk to some customers who've bought shares in a cow? That's how I understand. That's the understanding I have, isn't it?
I've not had any complaints, whether the dairy authority or people have, the last communication I had with dairy authority was a bit over 4 years ago, soon after we started the program.
What is the program though? You provide people with unpasteurised milk. In other words, someone buys a cow, they bring it to you, it gets milked, and you give them back some milk. Is that it?
Well, we have the cows. They buy shares in the cow, and they pay us a boarding fee because it's illegal to sell pasteurised milk. So this is the only legal way for people to consume it, is to drink milk from their own cow.
You haven't got rubber boots?
Sorry?
You haven't got rubber boots?
No, I don't. These are Gore-Tex. So
Okay.
they'll be right.
You'll be right?
Yep.
I might have to carry the camera so you can walk down a fence line and not get an electric shock.
Okay, cool.
But that'll be fine. We'll sort that out when we get there.
What's your normal day?
I don't think
Normally start.
I don't think there is a normal day. A lot of days we get the deliveries on the road first, and then milking, and then 3 days a week we're bottling. So yeah, it always varies. Eli!
So you do a morning and afternoon milking?
Yeah, we milk twice a day. Don't milk 3 times a day like we used to. So
Are the cows healthier by not milking 3 times a day? Or less, strain on them? Or does that make a difference or not? Or?
Probably the main difference with the cows is that we're not trying to get maximum production out of them. So there's definitely a lot less stress. Probably the one of the biggest ways that's been seen is we haven't had a sick calf since we've stopped supplying a factory, and so we just really put that down to the cows being not under stress. Means that the calves are born healthier, and so that's been a real evident signal. It's just a totally different philosophy on how we farm. I suppose that most commercial dairy supplying a factory have to get as much milk out of the cows as they can to pay their bills, whereas we're trying to produce the best quality milk we can, and we're not concerned about getting maximum production. If you walk right next to that wire, it's going to be the best. There you go.
And let's just get on to some of the concerns then that the authorities have. I mean, if you've got the police and Biosecurity SA and the Dairy Authority turning up at your place, I imagine there'd be quite a hefty fine and some concern. First of all, what can you be fined, and what are the consequences?
Well, they've placed a compliance order on us saying that we can't do anything other than milk the cows, I mean, there's a whole list of things, but really at the end it says until we comply with the legislation.
Which is to what? Boil the milk?
Well, there's different legislations. There's legislation that talks about food safety, and which their blanket requirement is for all milk to be pasteurised.
Which is raised to a almost near boiling temperature for a certain period of time. Is that right?
Yeah, well, there's different temperature and time combinations that they use. Mostly it's somewhere in the 70-degree mark is the more common temperature.
Mark Tyler, you're not selling this to the public. These are people choosing to have the milk for themselves. We can understand the public safety issue for the broader community, because pasteurised milk, of course, was brought in to avoid things like TB, typhoid, listeria, diphtheria, brucellosis. I mean, this is at the other end of the spectrum, isn't it? This is why we pasteurise milk. Yeah.
I mean, the requirements for pasteurisation, I mean, they came in a long time ago, well before modern milking machines and refrigeration, which have really done away with some of those risks. Tuberculosis and brucellosis have been eliminated in Australia for like 30, 40 years, so they're not risks either. But yes, there's risks, but all the shareholders, so we don't sell the milk to the public. All the shareholders that we have, is around about 600 of them, they've made an informed decision based on the benefits and the risks, and they've decided to invest in a cow and to pay us to look after it for them.
Oh yeah, just so the response to the raid was to get the shareholders together so that we could work out a strategy, but also show that there's a lot of people willing to put time and effort into working on the issue and supporting the farmers. So so Mark and Helen's idea was just to have a meeting of the shareholders. So we helped to organise that, found the venue and speakers, and they invited shareholders to come up and tell their stories. So there was some really good testimonials from people that have had, of their stories about why they go to such lengths to find their raw milk.
G'day everyone. Can everyone hear me up the back okay? I assume that's a no, so is that better? My name's Hamilton and my family are my Cow Shareholders, and we're so excited to be here today. I'm delighted that Mark asked me to chair tonight's session. Firstly, I think this is a great opportunity to thank Mark and his family for continuing to provide our families with the right to enjoy the wonderful benefits of raw milk. So on behalf of all of us, would you join me in thanking Mark, Helen, Guy, Gabby and Rachel for looking after our cows. Now, we do truly live in a strange world. On one side of the world in America, the FDA, the Food and Drug Authority, or as Joel Salatin likes to call them, the food police, raid retail stores or veggie shops which are selling raw milk with guns drawn and with strong-arm tactics. And then on the other side of the world, in Europe, in France, we have what they called distributeur de la crue, or if you do understand French, my bad French probably didn't help you there, but in translation it means raw milk vending machines. Vive la France, I say. I wish we could follow that model rather than the American one.
Most of the big agricultural sectors have strong lobbying organisations behind them. What of course we don't know is who is it that has been lobbying the minister and the bureaucrats, how powerful they are, what threats, veiled or otherwise, have been offered. We can only speculate, and that's not necessarily helpful. So the approach that I'm taking on behalf of the Greens is to sort of go back to first principles, have a look at what's been happening at Willunga Hill there, having a look at the legalities of the cow share scheme, having a look too at the public health evidence. And I should say, before I went into Parliament 7 years ago, I used to lecture in public health law at Flinders University. So I'm well aware of some of the great advances that have been made over many years in terms of public sanitation and healthier food, and or at last, food that's sort of less contaminated with bacteria. We've got use-by dates which have been in for a few decades now. And the evidence that I've seen is that handled correctly, stored correctly, transported correctly, there is no reason why unpasteurised milk can't be safe. And that's the service that's being offered by Moo View Dairy, and it's the product that the shareholders want to access. And so it boils down to, in some ways, the old nanny state. What right does the state have to dictate to people what they can and can't consume? And I guess at that sort of very big picture general level, I'm on the side of free choice. I mean, the irony is, to get to the raw milk, you have to walk past the alcohol, and you've got to walk past the tobacco, and you've got to walk past McDonald's. There are no shortage of products that are known statistically to be far more dangerous than consuming unpasteurised milk that's been properly stored and properly handled.
So how is it that this property ended up being raided? Well, the South Australian Country Hour will be speaking to Biosecurity SA about that raid in just a few moments. However, David Basham is president of the South Australian Dairy Farmers Association, or SADA. He joins us now. David, thanks for your time this afternoon. Now, firstly, a point to clarify, SADA itself wasn't involved in this raid. It was the Dairy Authority of SA. What's the difference between those two?
The Dairy Authority is the regulatory body that looks after food safety issues around dairy farming, whereas SADA is the organisation that looks after the issues that face dairy farmers generally.
And so you're, I guess, the person that's been put up to speak publicly on this matter. Why is that then?
The industry for a very long time has understood the risks of raw milk and has been well and truly behind making sure that the consumers and the general public are protected from the sale of raw milk, and have supported that all the way along. So as farmers, we support making sure raw milk's not available.
Now, from what Mark Tyler says, he's not actually selling the milk. He's milking cows for people and then giving them the milk, charging an adjustment fee. What's the difference between that and, say, a dairy farmer himself who's supplying milk straight to his family, which I imagine a lot of dairy farmers must do?
Yeah, there's certainly some dairy farmers that consume their own milk. They are very aware of their own circumstances, and they're also very close to the source, so there is no risk of issues within the supply chain itself. So the risks are much lower for the farmer, and he's very aware of what risks are there. People that are further away, so in the city of Adelaide, consuming this milk, don't know how it's been handled, don't know what's actually gone on, and our concern is that it could lead to serious illnesses, including may even lead to deaths in certain circumstances.
So as an industry, you think it's still too risky?
Very much so, and Food Standards Australia and New Zealand, FSANZ, they recognise this, and that's why that governments and industry support the ban of sale of raw milk.
Now, there is a bit of history here. There's a lot of backstory, changing regulations. What's the story in this case?
Well, I mean, it's always been it's been for a very long time in South Australia that raw milk's not been permissible to be sold, and occasionally people come up with ideas and ways that they think they can get around those rules, and occasionally there are tweaks made to regulations to cover those loopholes. There's similar circumstances interstate where milk sold as for bathing milk, and it lists it's not for human consumption on it. That's just another way of trying to actually get away in selling these to skirt the law.
And I understand in this case you've been working with the dairy farmer in question, Mark Tyler, to try and find some way to go forward?
Not us. The Dairy Authority has been talking with this farmer for a fair length of time. My understanding is it goes back well and truly 4 or 5 years.
This is the 7th of August. We have Biosecurity here, the Department of Health, and they are coming in onto our premises. We have clearly stated that admittance by invitation only or trespass applies, and here they are taking milk, taking shareholders' milk that belongs to shareholders for testing, and normally milk would be taken straight from the vat if it was for a dairy company, and they're just stealing people's milk.
Even the basics about a cow share, just for him to really...
Yeah, this matter's only about are we required to be accredited dairy. Okay, that's all they challenged us on. Now they've brought this thing to the Magistrates Court, which also includes charging us with selling milk. Okay, so that means you've got two totally different acts that they're trying to debate at once.
Yeah.
But so they were wanting to adjourn this one till that went through.
Yeah.
And our position was that we wanted this to go ahead because they've had plenty of time to charge us with other things before we appealed. And so the judge agreed. So yeah.
So that's good.
So that's good.
That's what you wanted.
Yeah, that's what we want, because then it's just a simple question that can be addressed by the court without lots of other debates about whether people should have unpasteurised milk or whatever. It's just a question of the law, and we know that we're not breaking the law. So yeah.
That's the basis of it.
Yeah. Well, so this one's just, are we required to be accredited? So we can get that dealt with.
Yeah.
And then if they still want to go ahead with the other charge, then they can, and we just deal with the issues with the cow share program not being sale. So yeah.
I guess I'd heard about this happening in America. You know, farmers getting raided, getting taken to court for selling milk to shareholders and cow share kind of arrangements, because it seems to be that's the focus of the that kind of restrictive movement towards farmers. And so I was just absolutely stunned when here in little old Adelaide that the local cow share dairy just gets raided by Biosecurity. So yeah, we were just completely shocked, and at the same time, for somehow not surprised. Coffee, Damien? What? Do you want a coffee? No problem, mate. And so, yeah, we sort of, like, the first reaction was, we don't want to have to compromise on our food. Okay, so and how do we care for our cows in the face of all of this, and work together as a shareholder group to support our supply of milk? You know, that sounds a bit extreme, but I guess it's to all of us, and I think that would, all of the shareholders go to such extremes to get hold of the milk that we're pretty passionate about it, and to have the government step in and try and take that away is just outrage. This sort of sense of outrage. How could they, stop you, sourcing your food from your own cow?
So what are we doing today? We're waiting for Damien to come and deliver our milk, so that we can make some custard and make yogurt, make curds and whey. Cakes, yep. Make cakes with the curd. Yeah, just nice to have fresh milk. Do you drink it?
No, I don't drink any milk.
You don't drink milk at all?
No, I don't really have much dairy in my diet.
Yeah.
I used to be in a band, and I was singing. Yeah. And I'd have to go on milk or dairy bans leading up to a gig, because I'd get really phlegmy.
Yeah.
And then I just thought, stuff it. I'll just give up.
I think that's what happened, and that's what happened with us, and especially with Isla, it did, and then we tried all sorts of things, and I think because we grew up with milk, and in our family, both my Oma and my uncle and auntie are dairy farmers, so it was always such a big thing, and getting milk straight from the farm, and then trying to source it was just impossible until recently, I guess in the last few years. So I think if we couldn't get it, then I probably wouldn't drink it.
No, I think they're in court today, this morning. So
no, I just wondered if any messages had come through.
No, it's only 10 o'clock here, so we won't hear till tonight, I think, from them.
Yep. Are you both avid shareholders of Mark's Farm?
We are.
Yeah. We're from the beginning. Yeah, so it was pretty exciting when it got set up, because I know it was my kids have had dairy allergies, and so we used to be able to get raw milk. We used to be able to order it from Paris Creek Dairy, which is a big biodynamic dairy here in the Adelaide Hills, you might be familiar with. But so that was, I think, about 9 years ago. Was it 9 years ago that the legislation changed to outlaw the raw milk? And because South Australia was the only state that still allowed it. And the excuse was that they were just bringing us into line with the rest of the country. And there was quite a hoo-ha. I remember, going to see politicians and all that kind of thing at the time, and there was no way they were going to not pass it But so then for a while we were able to get pet milk and bath milk and this kind of thing from around the place. But when Mark set up, it was pretty exciting. And it grew so quickly, just really quickly. The whole farm to consumer thing. People just got so excited about milk in reusable bottles and getting it straight from the farmer.
But back to your questions relating to New Zealand, I've been doing a bit of research around the food safety, FSANZ. Actually, in the food safety standards, I can't find anything that bans the sale of raw milk. But to the contrary, it sets out what you need to do if you are selling it. So you need to. Like I said, for ourselves and a few others, it hasn't been, 10 years ago it wasn't that big, that we've been, consumers asking for us to sell them some milk from the farm gate, and because we've got that historical allowance in legislation in the Food Act, that a farmer can sell to neighbours, etc., for their family. And we got 1,685 submissions. They've told us they normally struggle to get 3 or 4.
Is it just from
1,685?
Just from New Zealand?
Yeah, that was just from New Zealand. And there's only 3 against the sale of raw milk, I think it was. It blew those of us that have been involved in the industry for a while, blew us away as to how many dairies were out there were actually selling raw milk, and what the level of interest was. So at the time we realised, okay, this is now getting out of control. We're going to lose legislation. It's going to be banned if we don't take a front foot action. So we decided it was time to step out of the closet and be proactive in trying to work with MAF. It was now MPI, but I'll keep calling them MAF because it's what's ingrained in my brain. And it's taken us 12 months to get there, but we've now formed the association, and it will be an incorporated society. And our principles are that we agree that it is a perishable food, that it needs to be handled with care, needs to have good, sound regulations or handling conditions which will equate to regulations around it. Because the last thing we all need is for people to be getting sick and to have it completely banned. And we have a range of large farms selling straight from the farm back, and we have little operations where there's one cow being milked out in the paddock and the milk being sold, and in pretty unsanitary situations. So it can be, it's not any one thing that can cause the problem. So we've now got to go through the process of coming up with our own discussion document to put forward to MAF, and sort of come up with a voluntary code of practice. And in New Zealand, we've been working with a couple of people in MAF, and they're very supportive of what we do. They've given us examples of organisations like the Specialist Cheesemakers Association, the Ice Cream Manufacturers Association, who have in the past come up with their own voluntary code of practice, which now MPI recommend as the industry standard.
Okay.
So that's where we're sort of heading.
Well, we have been able to get in contact too with Biosecurity South Australia. Jeff Raven, the Manager of Plant and Food Standards for Biosecurity SA, joins us. Jeff, thanks for your time. Is this process of having shares in a cow allowed under the rules that are set up at the moment?
Thanks, Nikolai. Yeah, look, we enforce a piece of legislation called the Primary Production Food Safety Schemes Act. It's a piece of food safety legislation which applies to primary producers. There's a dairy scheme under that, so that basically dairy regulations, and those regulations require any working dairy must be accredited with the dairy authority. The dairy authority actually administer that particular set of regulations.
And that hasn't been the case in this situation?
In this situation it hasn't. We've provided now papers to apply for accreditation to this particular dairy.
Do you have to be accredited?
That's a requirement of the law, yes.
And so, and if you are accredited, then you're not allowed to run a scheme like this where you can have shares in a cow and then provide milk to people that own those shares?
No, the requirement of legislation specifies as a condition of accreditation that the working dairy must provide milk produced to an approved processor, and the approved processors are required under their accreditation to pasteurise the milk.
Now, have these regulations changed recently? I understand that they've kind of evolved over time.
Look, not recently. The Act came out in 2004. I think these particular regulations around 2006, and then FSANZ developed a national food safety standard. So FSANZ is Food Standards Australia New Zealand. They developed a dairy food safety standard, and that's now being called up in the legislation and applies and requires that all milk for that is supplied for human consumption must be pasteurised.
Now, the dairy farmer in question here says that most of the health concerns that have been around historically behind raw or unpasteurised milk are gone. Does he have a point there?
Well, really, that's for somebody else to respond to. I'm not the necessary expert in that area. So our real focus is making sure that this dairy is operating legally, and to do so it needs to be accredited. And then if it is accredited, then it needs to be supplying that milk to a processor for pasteurisation.
Clearly, I'm not as fit as that guy before me. My story begins when I was born. I was born in a little country called Kenya, and Kenya has the Nandi tribe, and they're very important in my life. And I say that because when I was born, my mother wasn't able to properly breastfeed me. And you've got to remember, about 60 years ago, there was no such thing as milk powder or any of the fancy things we have today that can supplement a growing baby. The dilemma she had was, what does she feed me? Fortunately, she had a very understanding doctor, and as much as it embarrassed me sometime in this world that we had the servants in the property we were at in Kenya. Those people were part of the Nandi tribe, and the staple diet for the Nandi tribe is raw milk and blood, and often nuts and greens, but nothing else. I survived simply because I had that raw milk. And I think you can probably see that while I'm not perfect today, at least I'm still here. About middle of 2008, I had the unfortunate incident where I lost the sight in my right eye. They described it as an autoimmune disease. So I asked, what's an autoimmune disease? Well, we don't really know. So how do you cure it? Well, we really don't have a cure for it. What we do is fill you full of a steroid called prednisolone and hope that that reduces the swelling enough for you to survive. What they don't tell you is the side effects and the depression that you get using it.
you really stumbled across us and the milk. I think that was through your wife bumping into some people at the school, and then happened to see Helen when she was in there helping out one day. But I never met you early on. We sort of only dealt with your wife when you started up. But I know soon after you started, which I think was just under 2 years ago, I remember that she was going away for a week, and she was concerned that even though you only live a few kilometres down the road, that you weren't even up to driving up here to collect your milk. And then 18 months later, you're able to drive yourself into the city to stand in front of 300 people and share your story. I mean, you didn't get to finish it, but just the fact, and that's what people at the meeting really didn't understand, was how much progress there'd been in your life to that point.
And I regret not actually sort of finishing by saying my life has changed because I've been on the pasteurised milk. I had the opportunity to talk to other professionals, not strictly medical professionals, but they suggested that I look at other forms of treatment. And what I found was a book called Autoimmune Disease, The Cause and the Cure. I defy anybody to read more than 2 or 3 pages and not be impressed by the scientific evidence that this book provides. It is written by 2 doctors who were suffering from the disease, and they have had this peer reviewed. So if there are any politicians or bureaucrats out there who don't know what it's about, have the guts to buy the book and actually read it. It's important. Thank you.
There's one farmer who's got 100 acres and 35 cows that supplies milk to all of these people, and it's just a real sense of connection to them and their land, and it's all so close to, so close to where we live. It's less than 50 k's from where we consume the milk here in Adelaide, so yeah.
So more and more research, we found these little tiny grains called kefir, and we got them and we put them in normal milk, normal pasteurised milk, because we were told this kefir is going to change your son's life. And we watched it grow and we watched it ferment, and we started to drink it, and we all got horribly sick and thought, this was going to change our lives, what happened? And so I haven't had dairy for probably 15 years. I've always had trouble with it. So we decided, okay, this is not the thing for us. And then we did more reading and we worked out that why don't we try this raw milk? So we tried raw milk, and I think the bacteria that is surviving in the raw milk, the kefir just loves it, and it grows and it grows and it grows, and these grains live. So my son drinks a litre of kefir a day, a litre of this stuff a day. He started school 4 weeks ago in a normal school. He he still has an autism diagnosis because he had 3 years of extreme health issues and he has to catch up. But he talks, Mummy, I love you. He made a friend 3 days ago for the first time, and all the behaviours are gone, the extreme behaviours of hitting and screaming. I don't have chunks of hair missing anymore. All of those things have gone now, and we have a son that is learning to be a child again. We can't do it without the milk. If the milk's not around, my son won't continue healing. I'm struggling to not cry. So please keep giving us the milk, because without it, we can't keep healing. And my daughter's the same, I'm the same, and my father's the same. So yeah, it's changed our lives. I have my child back. So thank you.